The Propagation of the Gospel. 16. The Epistle to the Romans. Paul's 3 months visit to Corinth must have been a time of much labor and many cares. It was not a small undertaking to restore order and harmony among the factions which were injuring the church, and to exercise the needful discipline upon the members guilty of immorality. There were also parties, as we have seen, which were bitterly antagonistic to Paul, and that too because of his condemnation of the false doctrines which they were disseminating to the hurt of the cause. 2 of these were in diametrical opposition to each other and had no band of unity except hostility to the apostle. One of those was the Judaizing party, who insisted that all Christians were bound to obey the whole ceremonial law. The other was the antinomian party, who held that even the observance of the moral law was not implied in faith in Christ, and that the latter liberated the believer from all moral obligation. Doubtless, out of this teaching had come much of the immorality which called for the exercise of apostolic authority. Though there is no detailed account of Paul's action during this visit, there is a good reason to believe that he excommunicated the immoral members, that he gave proofs through the miracles he was permitted to work of his apostleship, which had been impeached, and that his maligners were discomfited and rendered powerless, and that order and harmony were restored. And, were they people who were going to church looking for a date? Or what was the issue? This work, the attention to the collection for the indigent Christians in Judea, visits to the churches in the vicinity, and the epistle to the Galatians would occupy his time. Galatius, is that the Greek way you say it? I don't remember. The letter to the Romans was probably written just before his departure on the journey to Jerusalem. There is this peculiarity about this epistle, that it was written to a church he had never visited. Still, as an important church occupying a position in the metropolis of the civilized world, a place to and from which there would be many comers and goers of all classes, and especially as we see from the great number of salutations at the close of the epistle, a church in which Paul must have had many personal acquaintances, he felt desirous to communicate with them. Concerning the establishment of Christianity in Rome, we have no certain account. The Roman Catholics claim that it was founded by Peter, but there is no reliable proof of this, and it is even disputed by some that Peter was ever at Rome. Yet it is easy to see that in the constant and abundant communication of Rome with all parts of the vast empire of which it was the capital, some Christians would inevitably find their way thither. We read that among the multitude present on the day of Pentecost, strangers of Rome are mentioned. It is probable that the Jewish Christians here as well as elsewhere formed the nucleus of the church, but we judge that there was a large proportion of non-Jews in the body of believers. There do not appear to have been any such antagonisms between the 2 elements here at Corinth and at some other places, and the impression we get from this epistle is of an united, devoted, and energetic church, having in it many men and women of ability and some distinction. The epistle, while in many respects, and especially in the particular subjects discussed, similar to that to the Galatians written not long before, differs from it in this respect, that the latter was designed to correct erroneous views and perversions of doctrine, and was therefore highly polemical. This has no such object to accomplish, and therefore, while being thoroughly doctrinal, it is almost purely didactic. It is a profound and masterly setting forth of the fundamental doctrine of salvation by faith in Jesus Christ. One leading part of this is the relations of the law to the gospel, while the preliminary showing of the universal sinfulness and insufficiency of ceremonial and moral observance to remedy this, the method of righteousness by faith, the existence of which had been indicated in the case of Abraham, and through him had become the inheritance not only of the Jews, but also of other nations, with the bearings of this doctrine on all the interests of humanity, with practical hortatory directions, complete this masterly treatise. Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nero was the emperor between 54 and 68 of the Common Era. The date of the epistle is 57 or 58 Era Vulgaris. Where was Paul when the epistle was written? What matters occupied his attention, mainly while there? What trials did he have at this time? What importance did the church at Rome have? What was there peculiar about Paul's writing to them? How is it supposed that Christianity was first introduced into Rome? Of whom was the church composed? The character of the church. To what other epistle is this similar? How does it differ from that? What is the main subject? What is one of the principal topics? What are some of the subjects preliminary and subsidiary to this? What authority does the apostle appeal? To what authority does the self-proclaimed apostle appeal in proof of the truth of the gospel? 1 and 2. Verses 1 and 2. To what fact, in relation to Christ, here and elsewhere, is the reference made clarifying his divine character and mission? Verse 4. What commendation of the church at Rome is made? 8. The feeling of Paul towards them? 9 through 11. What does he announce and make grand, paramount subject of his letter? 16, 17. Are the heathen who have not the Bible wholly excusable on that account? 18 through 20. By refusing to obey the light they had, what followed? Verse 21 through 25. What dark picture does the writer draw of the rest of the world? 26 through 32. If the Gentiles if the non-Jews who had no direct revelation were to be condemned, how is it with the Jews? 2, 1, 3, and 5 are those verses. And, well, this is the thought that has, while not supported by Islam, a lot of people in Islam have picked up penalties and other issues from the Jews and the Christians that is not present in their faith in Islam, but people who call themselves Muslim are, so the thing there is that why didn't God send prophets to all the nations, or allow for enough to come to the prophets to all nations? That's what Islam teaches, but Christianity and Judaism told it was about one tribe. It's like, what about Cyrus the Great? Wasn't he the Messiah in the book of Daniel? Yes. Noah wasn't a Jew. Noah was like Turkish. Well, can we say he was Turkish, or maybe he was Kazakhstani or something like that? Abraham was a Persian. Also, I'm referring to Persian as race, not like the Arabs on one side, Arab being mixed, and the Persians being the other mixed race, more on the ascetic character, more white too. But this isn't quite the issue, but Gentile, Jew, that's where I'm going with this. But if the latter, with all their light, still sinned, how would their condemnation compare with that of the former? What is the general doctrine comprehending both of those who have, and those who have not a revelation? Verse 12 and 13 through 15. What is the teaching concerning unapplied knowledge? 17 through 24. Would an outward observance of the ceremonial law among the Jews render them really the people of God? Verse 25 through 29. How does this apply to the Christians? What advantage had the Jews over other nations? Chapter 3, verse 1 through 4. 2, 3, 5. Okay, yeah, I did say it too. Did this necessarily save them? Verses 5 through 9. What terrible indictment does the apostle bring against the human race as a whole? 10 through 20. Well, that's important, is that if they have, there's got to be issue with humans as a whole. If there's going to be a prophet that's going to be, the message is going to last, right? And so we learn blood and soil is not going to save you. It's what character you have, right? If, then, men are not saved by law, what is the remedy? 21 through 26. Is the righteousness of God something to be substituted for our righteousness, or is it a method by which we are to be made righteous? What is the conclusion, then, concerning the relations of the Jews and Gentiles, the Jews and the non-Jews, as regards to the gospel dispensation? Verses 27 through 31. What example does the apostle cite to prove that this very idea of justification by faith is anterior to the giving of the law? 4, 1 through 3, 9, 10, etc. Were the Jews alone, then, the spiritual heirs of Abraham? And to whom did God's covenant with him pertain? 11 through 17. Why could there be no room for grace if men were to be saved by keeping the law? Well, you could say that most of the value isn't in fear and hope. It's in the character underlying that. How then are men saved? Verses 5 through 8, 24 and 25. Is this faith that saves a belief in certain facts or doctrines, creeds, or even concerning the persons and character of Christ? If it be a disposition of heart, what is the disposition and how is it related to the divine law? What is the plan and method by which God rescues men from the condition in which the law leaves them? 5, 6 through 11. What is the process? 1 and 2. The effect. 3 through 5. What contrast is drawn between Adam and Christ? 12 through 19. Does the redemption by Christ that they claim simply cancel sin, or does it avail something vastly more? Or what other symbolic value might you look at that with, or whatever? 21 and 20 are the verses. Does the fact that we have exercised faith and are under grace render it of no consequence whether we sin or not? Chapter 6, 1 through 14. See also the topic 13 in this lesson, the last question. Can one under grace who does not purpose to renounce, can one be under grace who does not purpose to renounce sin? If we are in the practice of any sin or desire to commit it, what is doubtless our condition? You got to deal with your reward system, not just your control system. What is the condition of him who yields to the service of sin? Verse 16, the effect of faith and the character of Christ's service. 17, 18, 20, 21 through 23, what illustration is given of a converted man's relation to the law. 7, 1 through 6.